Good afternoon, my friends. This is Noreen at the Healthy Peaceful Podcast. And today I have the fabulous opportunity to interview Barbara Slaine of the Life Balance Center in New York. Barbara is essentially involved in transitioning in the dying and death process. And we're going to speak specifically about her new documentary film, The Ripple Effect, which is currently in production. But first, I'd like to start out, Barbara, with just a little bit about your background, how the Life Balance Center was formed, a little bit about your own personal and professional evolution. What brought you to this point today?
You know, it's funny because I wonder, I think sometimes it's just kind of following the bouncing ball, but I've always been interested in mind, body, soul. I was a medical assistant. I've always been interested in alternative modalities. And then I went back to become a holistic health counselor, and I started a center. And throughout the center, and I would bring in amazing healers, practitioners. Very important to me that it's based in science. And what culminated at the end of my journey with the center is what happens at the end of our lives. What happens at the end of our lives, and how can I prepare, and what does not preparing look like? And that led me into a journey of becoming an end-of-life doula, hospice trained, studying and getting certified in all different traditions, from Buddhist to Hindu to American Indian, to want to pull the pieces together that would make my transition and my loved ones more conscious, more with less fear, and more knowledge and more planning. And so it's just been an amazing journey. And then I had a desire to teach in the prisons, because for me, to die in prison, my thought process at that time, I couldn't imagine that, not being free and then having to die in a prison. And most prisons don't have any support for that. So I ended up teaching in the Connecticut prison system. And it is the most remarkable program. These men are trained to become hospice volunteers for their fellow incarcerated community. But it's what happens to these men. So no man dies alone, and they die with dignity, but that's the back for the front, because these men enter a rigorous program of medical, spiritual, mental training. And all of a sudden they stop, they're asked to look within, they pause, and then they get to serve. And interestingly enough, I finally went back on Wednesday into Osborne Correctional Institute in Connecticut. And I asked the men, I said, I've been thinking about this. What's more important to you that was life-changing, the training or serving? And they all said serving, because with the knowledge they had to be there for another human being at the end of life, death is the great equalizer,
Right.
Is so healing and reflects back to them. So many of these men are traumatized. So they've lived in what Marquis said, he's lived in the projects. They see people dying, but they don't connect to it. But when you're sitting with someone as their life is ending and you're their caretaker and they want you and they need you, there's meaning in your life. It's like Viktor Frankl, their life has meaning, but now they're experiencing mortality. And what one gentleman said to me this week was, I finally broke down and cried. I realized what it was to take a life, how precious life is. So most of these men, 80% of them, come from behind the walls into our world. They are us, we are them, and they're forever changed by this program. They would never.
Yeah, that's really, wow. That's spectacular. So, yeah, I mean, I love what you shared so far, and just sharing a little bit about your background and your interest first and foremost in the healing arts. And particularly, combining a number of different modalities.
Right.
You know, and particularly bringing in the Eastern traditions where there's less of a tendency to push away the unpleasant, and to push away, the ultimate transformation, which is death, the end of life. And, to bring those in to be able to flesh out the experience for yourself, and also flesh it out in working with clients. Usually it's something personal. I mean, we can have this general kind of awareness of, kind of the trite, some of these trite statements that life is temporary, it's all a part of life, but these statements really don't, I think, address the profundity of this experience when you're sitting with a loved one, when your clients are faced with their own mortality, when we're all think if there's a serious illness or we're transitioning a loved one, which is a very intimate experience. So I'm just wondering if there's something, what was it for you? You were involved with the healing arts, which is, can be all encompassing, and you can go in so many different directions. What was there, a catalyst or a number of things? And I like the fact that you said that you followed the bouncing ball.
Well, I mean, first of all, I was diagnosed with cancer when I was 45. So people say, wow, that must have started your journey. And it didn't. I never thought I was going to die, even though I found out years later that it was a serious cancer. I just never thought about it.
You're referring to when you were diagnosed, you didn't feel that was,
I didn't realize
that
that triple negative.
You felt like you could heal from that experience.
Yeah, I guess because my doctor was intelligent enough not to say this is really serious. I just never focused on that I could die. I focused on living at the time, and I did everything that I could do. But I grew up in a family, like most of us, where death is pushed under the rug. There's a tremendous fear. My mother was terrified of death. She died young, but our culture is terrified of death. It's going to happen someplace else, on television, to someone else. It happens, and we quickly kind of just take care of it and then move on with our lives. And as Stephen Jenkinson, who wrote the book Die Wise, says, part of the fear of the dying person is, are they going to not exist at all? Because in other cultures, we are kept alive. Here, we kind of just go forward. We don't even have time sometimes to process. So
say more about that. We are kept alive. What you mean by that statement?
That we are.
Yeah, you said in other cultures,
in other cultures, they're kept alive, where they're honored. There are altars. There's the Day of the Dead in Mexico. There's the old people live with the families. The birth to death process is witnessed, is seen, is encouraged.
Okay.
We're not.
So it's more of a participatory process. It's not somebody's in the dying process and they're sequestered to a nursing home, and the family can, it's not as visceral for the family, for other participants, that in other cultures there's a full participatory process in dying, in helping family members.
Example is, I have two clients now. One is a Chinese family, and one is a Jewish family. And the tradition in the Chinese family is their mother is dying and will die at home.
Sure.
With the other family, and the husband is a doctor, she wants to go home, but he wants to keep her in the hospital. So what's that about? What is that about, that he's more comfortable in the medical system, that he doesn't want to be present in his home with death, and he's a doctor. So I'm saying that we are not comfortable with the dying process. Well, actually, there is no dying. People live their fullest till their last breath. So the word dying, I actually think, should be removed from our vocabulary. The most poignant, beautiful moments of living are at the end. And what happens with the men in prison is they are sitting there without any distractions, sharing and gaining this unbelievable wisdom that is being passed on from these men that are transitioning in prison. So it's a gift. It's our responsibility to die, to participate in our death, and to be aware of what's happening, because it's going to have an effect, a ripple effect on our families, our loved ones, and whoever is there. We have to plan.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. In terms of the prisons and you're documenting this through a film project with the title currently, The Ripple Effect. Why did you select that title? Why is there a ripple effect by essentially you have a training program where there's 8 weeks where you're training? Tell me a little bit more about the program first. Yeah.
So the program, Florence Walt was an English nurse that brought hospice to the United States and pioneered this program. The program was started out west during the AIDS epidemic by an amazing man, Fleet Mall, who's a PhD, and he kind of started a program of hospice during the AIDS epidemic. And inspired by that, an actual program was developed in Connecticut it's a whole training. And these men are trained from medical. I mean, how do you turn a patient? How do you take them to the bathroom? But they're also trained in listening and being present. And it has literally changed their lives. There's one man, Eli, a Black gentleman, who had to take care of a man who was dying, who had SWAT stickers all over him. And he said, from my training, I learned I had to do the right thing, that I had to take care of him and put all the noise and what he was calling me, out of my mind. And so look what's happening to all of these people, the wisdom that's being shared. The value of life is seen in death. So what happens by not being present with death and life is that we lose the value of life by ignoring death.
Yeah, I mean, you there's so many things that you just shared. First of all, it's in working for purposes of our discussion, we can just really focus on being with a loved one through the dying process. And there's an opportunity to be, it sounds like with these incarcerated individuals or previously incarcerated who are participating in this essentially hospice training program and working with terminally ill, incarcerated individuals, that there's a real opportunity for them to, they've been given the gift of presence.
Yeah, and I didn't answer your question. I realized you asked about the ripple effect. It's presence, and it's, okay, so here you are in the prison. They vet a group of men. So now, first of all, the ripple effect is this. Within a larger community, they have their smaller community. Excuse me. And what they said to me yesterday was they can all be there for each other. They're all lean on each other. The stories they told me when one of the men's mother died, how the support they got, that would not happen in a regular prison population because everybody is so shielded. So the ripple effect is the men die with family, their fellow, incarcerated community. The men get to heal. The men have a community. The men now have meaning in their lives and are regarded by the prison staff with respect because they're walking down the hall with a hospice shirt. But what really was the deciding factor that this had to be in every prison and seen was when I went to the graduation and I saw the loved ones, their mothers, their fathers, their children come into the graduation where the men are graduating with a certificate, and I saw the pride of the men and the pride of the family, of the family members and the loved ones. And I do believe, and so do many others, that this is going to stop a trajectory of families following their parents into prison, because this happens a lot. They're seeing that their parent has changed, their loved one has changed, that change is possible. So the ripple effect to the families of the men that are incarcerated, knowing that they're being tended to and loved because they can't be there. And the men have often explained to me that by taking care of the men inside, they feel some solace that they couldn't be there for their dying family members. So the ripple effect goes on and on and on until they come back to us totally transformed.
Right. Yeah. You and I spoke briefly about my personal experience. I have two loved ones in a nursing home since around October 1st. I've been here since October 1st and really kind of on the ground with them every day. So I definitely understand what you're saying just from my current experience. I'm in the thick of it. And I think you can start out with a loved one saying, well, I'm going to do everything I can do. And, not that you think you're going to fix something, but you have these preconceived notions of what this process is.
100%. And it's so individual. There is no set course.
And then you get into it and you realize, wow. And for me, it's an opportunity to, again, it's the way that we interact with death in our culture, that we push it away, or it's somewhere in the future. It's not, in the Buddhist tradition, I think, I don't know if it's Tibetan Buddhism or, you have the glass, and in the evening, you put the glass down by your bedside, reminding you of the impermanence of life. And then the next morning, the glass is up again. So yeah, but I think that what you described, all of these things that come up, and it's really,
you said we push death aside, but that's the person. So we're pushing that person, even energetically, if we're there and we're afraid and we're walking in the room and we cannot be present with what is going to happen to us.
Right.
We're not honoring them or the sacred moment. What a loss.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what I have discovered through this process is it's the opportunity for me to participate in the full meaning of death in a way that's not intellectual. I'm not reading a book. I'm not, talking about it, but I'm living the experience, at the moment through my loved ones. But at some point it'll be my own experience. So that's something that, and when I say my own experience, that applies to all of us. But, many people in the US, and even what these inmates are doing, this is difficult. It's difficult to be, with this every day, and to also be aware of, when am I being present? When am I checking out? When am I trying to escape? When am I pushing away? What diversions am I trying to find because I don't want to feel the pain of this? But also there's light moments and levity and humor.
Yeah.
And, those trite statements about, well, death is a part of life. In sitting with the elders, in my case, elders, doesn't have to be. There's just, the experience is just so profound that, to actually take that time to actually be with them. And they start to open up. And I think this could relate to the inmates as well, that there starts to be a feeling of trust.
Well, you said two things that, well, death is our greatest teacher if we let it. And in our society, to sit with someone who's slowly dying, I mean, that's kind of not how we operate. So it kind of forces us to really be. And what I always say when I go to someone's bedside is, how can I serve? Just remove me and all my, noise, and how can I serve? And by just sitting there and opening up that, you could call it a Reiki space, energy space, magic happens. It's soul talk. And that's just not how we operate in our culture.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of the heart to heart.
So beautiful. It's this family where we just started working with, and his wife had ovarian cancer 8 years ago, and it's come back. And for him to express himself, because a person who is coming to the end of their time on this planet, the body, and I know you interviewed Robert Sachs, goes through so many changes. And so we have to kind of move with them. And some of them are a little scary. They could get angry. There's fear. The body starts to shut down. And so if we understand this and we learn about it, we learn about death, there's, birth doulas, then knowledge is power in this circumstance.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because in learning about what's happening to the body and correspondingly what's happening with the mind and the consciousness.
Right. Like certain medications cause a huge amount of inhibition, and things will be said that you cannot take things too personally. And it's almost to be a witness and to be holding the space. But then, like you said, things open up, and it's this sacred container that the more we're present with others, the more we can be present for ourselves. I mean, let's face it, Woody Allen says, I don't mind dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens. I mean, this is an unknown. Like I'm very uncomfortable with the thought of dying still. It's a big unknown, but I know that by relaxing into anything, it's going to make it easier. Like with the birth, and when you breathe, it's easier. It's the same thing with the soul leaving the body. And so it's, George Harrison said, I really feel for people that have not planned at all for their end of life, because it requires, I teach a course with my colleague, and it's participation, presence, and peace. So there is a importance to understanding this process.
Yeah, and that's a one-day course that you teach at Life Balance Center?
Well, we're teaching it at Angel Wing in Ridgefield week from tomorrow.
Okay.
So basically we call it Death for Dummies. We've taken everything that we've learned and we've put it into this amazing book, and it's an overview, because let's face it, people don't want to spend a lot of time, but now there is such a big.
Have you written that book yet, Death for Dummies?
No.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Wouldn't be a bad idea, right? Let's do it.
Yeah.
Do it. So, a lot of people now are becoming end-of-life doulas. I did this, a decade ago. This is a big trend now. End-of-life doula, this is like in the zeitgeist now.
Oh, really? So is this particular program intended for people who want to participate as an end-of-life doula, or could it be for somebody who has a dying family member?
Absolutely. Our program is for anyone who just wants to learn. My teacher, who is the best, there are a lot of teachers. My teacher, Henry Fursko Weiss, who taught at my center, so I took his training twice, is a Buddhist, and he comes to this he walks his talk. social workers, sat at, hundreds of people who have transitioned. He's doing his course online now. And I think he is the best teacher. He started an ELDA, End of Life Doula Association, which he has now removed himself from, and he's teaching on his own again because it became a big business. But
what is his name again? What is his name again?
Henry Fersko, Fersko -Weiss, Weiss. He's a good friend. I'm happy to connect you. He's amazing. There's a course that starts next week that he's teaching.
He teaches online, and he has his own website, or
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure he does.
okay.
Yeah, and I
Sure,
can
sure.
connect you. But if anyone is interested in that, so my
Yeah.
feeling is, do you have to become an end-of-life doula to know what you're doing? No, come and take our course. And there's
Mhm.
lots of other courses that are out there, but you just want to just get informed. I mean, this is
Yeah,
going to happen, and what's
absolutely.
scary is if it happens suddenly. So the
Yeah.
other thing, and we don't have to get into it now, is if you do not plan your end of life, and I do not mean a living will, we could talk about that. I don't advise it.
Sure.
Then all the chaos is around you, and your loved ones cannot just be present with you because everyone's scrambling and running. And so for me, it is imperative that I'm home. I don't care what it takes to be home. And I see people who are not allowed to do that. And I think that's tragic. I think end of life wishes need to be discussed with the family and to be cemented in, so you're not caught in a situation where you're powerless at the end of your life. I want to be home with my dog in my bed and nature as close to a tree as possible, with a certain kind of music playing. I'm Jewish, but I believe in the Hindu tradition of don't touch my body for 72 hours. I want my soul to leave peacefully, then you can touch me. Like there are things that are very, very important to me that I have learned that are from my consciousness and to evolve in the way that's for my highest and best good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And these are challenging discussions for family members to have.
I hate it.
And most of the time it may be a generational thing as well, that, a little bit of that, for instance, my dad and my aunt, they may be a little more reserved than perhaps I would be about expressing that to my children. So I'm not completely sure regarding that. But yeah, wow. So you made the statement that the planning is important, but also that this issue and really the support that we need through this process. One thing I discovered is, wow, I could have been better informed. And I think I told you that 15 years ago, I was an elder law attorney for 14 years. So you think that I would be informed.
Better informed how?
But I just mean, just in terms of like what you described, like the changes that the body goes through and the changes that the changes in consciousness of the elder. And it's sort of like in Robert Sacks's book, Perfect Endings. We can say that when somebody starts talking about, like my aunt will be talking about, her home and this home or that home. And my siblings will say, oh, she's confused. But after reading his book, I realized that home is part of the transition. And that in talking about home, this is very important for her.
Bingo. Yeah.
And, I would have attributed as, again, I would have taken the same view, but I decided, I need to start informing myself on what's really happening here. I mean, so that I'm not dismissive.
100%. And it's like, it goes to the fact where people have conversations when they think people have dementia or they're in a coma. and they hear everything. There's that book, Anita Moorjani, Dying to Be Me. She came
Yeah.
back from end of life.
Right. I haven't read
stage
that one, but I like
and
to.
she heard every conversation. We have to treat this as such a sacred time. We have to treat this when we walk into that space with complete reverence of every thought, every word that comes out of our mouth. We're energy. Everything is energy, and everything is going to affect that person at this really precious time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the other thing that, and I don't know if this can be completely eliminated or avoided, is many times when you have a parent who's the elder parent whose health has taken a turn, his or her children really may not have had the opportunity to work together as a team in decades, if ever.
Right.
So now all of a sudden you have, and I don't, I always say to myself, I'm one of 6 children.
Wow.
So I say, oh, this is complicated because now we have to get a buy-in of, I just wish I could just like be a free agent and just do it and it's done and not have a quorum and all of that stuff. And majority vote and whatever it is, it kind of can feel like a board of directors.
Absolutely. And that's why this should have been discussed years and years and years ago.
Exactly. So I am sure that I am not unique, and my family is not unique in what has transpired in this dance. And what I found was a lot of conflict initially.
And because the fear is there. So, I mean, the conflict is also because now you're looking at something you don't want to look at. Apart from all the logistics, right? Everything that you dealt with as a elder care lawyer.
Yes. There's an emotional component to the conflict and a profound sadness. As well as, there's a lot of, I think there's tremendous fear, not just of the imminent death, but of what am I going to be called upon to do? And am I going to be able to do it? Whether that's being by the bed.
What happens is, to speak honestly, I don't want to sit at someone's bed all day. I'm not made of that, Barbara Slaine.
Sure.
There are some people that could do it and they're great at it. So it's knowing what you're capable of and not judging yourself and then filling in the missing pieces with having other family members or whatever. One time my father was in a coma and I was there and I was
actually, Barbara, that is such a key point. I want to stop right there for a moment because I think that's really a key point for many families who are grappling with this is, what am I really capable of doing?
What am I capable of? And what am I resenting? Because you don't want to do anything at this time with resentment or fear.
Yeah. And if you're called to do something or you're doing it out of a sense of duty and responsibility, what's coming up for you in that case, in terms of resentments, and who are the resentments toward? How can I reconfigure both how I'm feeling toward myself, the situation, and other family members?
Well, absolutely. So there's 2 things that are very, very important. First of all, people call us to help the family navigate and to give them breaks. But as a chaplain told me, if you have unresolved anger, and unresolved fear, and your patient is expressing it, how are you going to be present with it?
Right.
That's really hard. So
yeah.
you
So say more about that. If you have well, most families do have.
Well, okay, so sometimes people get very angry, very, very angry. And if you're uncomfortable with your own feelings towards the person or your own anger, it's a good time to remove yourself and have someone step in who might be able to handle that situation.
Right. Okay.
better.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point that if you're acting out on your own unresolved emotions with the parent, let's say in this particular case, the parent, who's at end of life, then you really have to evaluate, am I making a positive contribution here?
I'd like to give a quick illustration, which is we had a client, we came in, they didn't know us. The daughter said, are you going to do some weird spiritual stuff? We said, we're non-denominational. We do hold a Reiki space. We walked in the room, her college friends were there. And the thing that happens with death is people think if they're doing, they're effective. It's not about doing, it's about being. Can I get you this? Can I do this? No, the person who's ending, whose life is ending, they don't want to be, they're trying to kind of go inside and retreat. And so we walked in,
that doing versus being, because there are
it.
some family members, and I think that's the way they deal with their stress.
Oh my God, but that is so chaotic because the person's trying to retreat. It's almost like you don't want to wake them up. You don't want to force them to eat when they're retreating. You don't want to touch their body too much on the lower part of the body because the soul kind of ascends. So no one knew what to do. We suggested the daughters get into bed with her. She had a big smile on her face. We allowed them to express themselves. One said, don't go. One said, we're here with you if you want to go. But her ex-husband was in the room. And we were holding the space. And he started to inch up, and then she put her hand on his head, and he looked at Sue and I, and he said, I feel like I'm on an acid trip. Like it was like all of a sudden, the whole craziness in the room was transformed to love. And we were just holding the space. We were just allowing things to kind of settle down. So, but it's chaos. I mean, her college roommates were just like, military.
Right.
Kind of so.
Well, it sounds like you were a real catalyst for allowing that to happen for the family.
That was amazing, and we thought we'd be back the next day, and she left that night very peacefully. So
beautiful.
And it's easier to leave when the body's relaxed. And if another thing people don't realize is emotionally, if you're afraid and you're pulling on the person, you don't want them to leave. You're thinking about yourself. You're not saying, we'll always be together. You're safe. I'm with you, but don't go, or that energy is there. This makes it so much harder for them.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. There's no doubt. It's just, to me, it's without any training like end of life doula. It's like an emotional attunement for me.
Yeah.
That's what I've been experiencing, that I'm tuning in emotionally
To yourself and them.
Yes. But I want to actually go back to a point you raised earlier about this end of life doula and this just a discussion we're having, that this is now in the you said it's in the zeitgeist. Tell me more about that.
I get calls all the time. I want to do this. I'm a doctor. I want to do this. I'm changing careers. I mean, it really now, I think it was like, in the 60s when everybody wanted to be a decorator. It's just like, I don't know. It's a real thing now. It's a thing that people want to do this. And I would imagine it's because it's so real. I think people, and now look at COVID. If you think about COVID, that death was, it was so in our faces and people were
Right.
dying and you didn't know when. And all of a sudden our reality or feelings of control, which we don't have, was really so present. So I think it's really awakened people to want to understand, hence they're going into being an end-of-life doula. But it's also, I think, people want to connect deeper. And what is more
Oh, yeah,
than
that's
death?
maybe
People want real,
right.
that
They
relationship.
they don't they don't they're they don't necessarily want to continue to numb out.
Yes, and the depth of relationships I have with people and families is so beautiful. It's an honor and a privilege, and people don't do that in everyday life. We have so many masks, apart from the masks that we have to wear now. So it's like all the masks come off, everything. There's nothing more. We're just kind of raw, and you're present with that. And it's kind of like when the trees lose their leaves and we feel so sad. And we sit with it, if you sit with it. But in some way, if we know that everything continues to a certain degree, and I know we lose our loved one and it's horrible and it's not tangible, but I think if we just get more in tune with the rhythm of life, I think life becomes more peaceful. And I think this is why people are being drawn. But I do think that COVID was a big impetus for people to do this. They're tired of the bullshit. They want real, and death is real.
Yeah, that says it all. That says it all.
Yeah.
I know we took a little bit of a detour there away from the documentary, so I want to return to that because I
Sure.
know how important that is to you. But thank you for being willing to explore kind of with me the emotional tenor of this process. I really appreciate that. I
Well,
want to
thank
say that.
you, because
Yeah.
actually you made me aware of things I've never thought of through this discussion. It was really illuminating to me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah.
And the film is in progress. I'm happy to
Right.
discuss it with you because what these men have to share, I would rather spend time with them than a lot of the people I know. They're so real. They're so
Yeah.
real. They have no choice.
Mhm.
And the stories that I have, we could go into the stories one day of their bedside stories with the men that are incarcerated. They're so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, so this documentary film that is in production.
Well, it started, we went yesterday, and so it hasn't started yet. There are friends of mine that were hospice
Sure.
volunteers in the prison that are out, and they'll be reflecting in. There is a man who will be coming out soon, a beautiful man who is a hospice volunteer. We'll be following him from the inside out. And then we'll follow two new vetted volunteers as they start their journey. So it's
Beautiful,
reflection
beautiful.
from inside
Okay.
out.
So you have the inside, you have the outside, and you have new
The
coming
middle.
in.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, and if you were to, when you have a project like this, it's going to take on a life of its own. You already know that. Um, and it's going to go in ways that you don't anticipate. But if you were to right now, if I were, and I am asking you to identify like the 5 kind of lessons that you want to convey as a result of this project, what's right now, and I know this will change, your message. What is your message? Like if you were to say the top 5 things that you want people to come away from this film with a new awareness regarding these things.
That service and death are our biggest teachers, and that transformation is possible. I want to give a face to these men, to the faceless. I never thought about who was in prison and what they were doing till I went in. These are beautiful, amazing people. I'm not talking about psychotic serial killers. I'm talking about people that have been traumatized and been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Humanity and love. It's about humanity. It's about, as Fleet Mall says, who started the program, if we don't pay attention to them, we're not focusing on a part of us. It's like our shadow side. So they're not throwaways, and death is not a throwaway.
And actually, I love that word that you use, the throwaway, because we can do that with our elders.
Exactly. And we do that
Especially
with anything that's distasteful. Incarcerated men, death, elders. Why is that so? And it's our youth obsessed culture, but the wisdom is there. It is a gift to have children grow old in a home with the elders.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
prison reform.
Right.
Every prison needs this, not just so the men don't die
Right.
alone, because it's humanity and it transforms the whole community. And
Of course. And this is in Connecticut that you have this.
It's at Osborne.
Is this like a pilot project or?
No, they've been
the
doing
prisons?
it for, the program's been in existence. So no, it's going. They called me in to be an adjunct teacher, which is how I met the men and saw what was going on there. And I was blown away.
Okay.
And
And so it's happening in 2 prisons in Connecticut or more?
we're trying to figure out which one. It will be either Osborne or McDougal. So it's happening. I don't know. It might be both.
Okay.
It's very early days.
Sure.
So it's unfolding, and I've learned, which we've all learned through COVID, patience, what you said earlier on, to be flexible, because that's what life is. We have to kind of go with the flow, and we don't know what's going to happen. So each person, each death, each life is individual. There is no kind of a cookie cutter way to die, way to live, and I think death teaches us that. Doctors will say you have 6 months to live, and 3 years later, and she's going to die this week, and she's alive 6 weeks later, or she's going to live and she dies the next day. It's such an individual process that should be respected. Every life should be respected.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, are there other states that have this project in the prisons as well?
There was a movie about the one in Angola. I don't know if that's up and running. It was like Private Jack Ryan, and they went in, and there's hospice. But the difference with this program, and I haven't investigated a lot of the other ones, is that it's mind, body, soul. They treat these men holistically, and therefore the men treat their patients holistically. But it really is about love and humanity. I mean, as cliche as it is, that's what it boils down to. All of a sudden, these men are looking at another man who's vulnerable and saying, I need you. How could that not change you? They would never put another human being again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in Ayurveda, I've done a lot of episodes on Ayurveda. They talk about the heart lotus, and it's really the opening of the heart lotus. And that is transformative. And
oh yeah.
And it's a very delicate place. It's a very delicate, and it doesn't easily open.
Depending, right, on the circumstance, it requires a lot of presence and love.
Yeah.
And I have so much more I could say, but we'll save it for another time. But
of course.
But it's how to plan. Robert Sachs, you interviewed him. He does the
puja. Yeah.
I mean, that's in my will. I want Robert to do the puja. I want the Maha Mantra playing, which is what they do in the Hindu religion. So it kind of ushers the soul out. Like, people have to get with it, stop avoiding it, plan. And then it's almost like, you're like, wow, I faced it already. I've done it. And now I get to live. And oh my God, every moment is so great. Because if you deny death, you get distracted with things that are really, the fear kind of propels you into things that are, I think, not very meaningful. If you're
Yeah.
scared with death, life becomes so rich. If you're running away from death, what are you living? Where are you going? Where's the presence? If you're
Yeah,
filling it in with
absolutely.
distractions, and I'm not saying, I mean, shopping is fun, but still everything
Well,
within,
everything in moderation.
yeah,
We're in this play of life, so we're here to enjoy it. But I think, as you've indicated, the more we confront is not the word that I want to use, just the more that we embrace,
great word.
And
Acknowledge.
acknowledge and be with it, it's certainly going to change the way we live. There's no doubt. And I know we're at the top of the hour, so I want to be respectful of your time. And I've got two more things that I want to ask, and that is, in doing some reading in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition and Robert Sacks's book and other readings that I've done, they talk about, the way we live is the way we die.
Yeah, Pema Chodron just wrote that book. And I recommend that wholeheartedly, because
is that a new book? Because she has an older book on death and dying as well.
It's her new book, The Way We Live,
Okay.
It's the Way We Die. And
Okay.
It's brilliant because she talks about the bardos, but you could also, if you don't want to be, kind of inclined to the Buddhist tradition, you could look at it as just your psychology. What have you become unattached to? What have you resolved? Because those are things that are going to make for an easier, more peaceful ending. So is the way we live the way we die? I would say yes, but maybe not always, because I'm a believer that things can happen dramatically that could change you at that time. I've seen that with death. However,
okay, that's a very good point.
That's where the preparation comes in, because your personality is, if you're in denial your whole life, it's not going to stop unless something dramatic happens to awaken you. And people do have epiphanies.
Yeah. You make a very good point. It's never too late, in other words.
No, and they say in the Hindu religion that the last words out of your mouth, no matter what you've done, will bring you into a higher consciousness. It doesn't matter. And, that goes back to the old Christian doctrine that, you will be forgiven. That kind of thought process is that if your soul turns towards the light, that's what they talk about in Buddhism, like the funny thing is, some say go to the blue light, some say go to the white light. I need to get that clarified so I didn't get confused, but it's that turning upwards, turning towards the light.
Absolutely. And the last thing I want to touch upon is just, you made the point about healing, and that, somebody could be diagnosed with a terminal illness, and one person, death can occur in a relatively short period. Another one can live for a decade. And Deepak Chopra makes a statement that, looking at wellness and health, and really the discovery that medical care is not mechanistic, that the trajectory is not always the same. It's like the molecules of emotions that he also talks about. Can you speak to that a little bit, or do you have anything to add regarding that?
There's so much. I mean, we can change our reality and our bodies to a certain degree. I mean, you talk about Dr. Sarno, right? The emotions affect the somatics of the body. If you address the emotions, it goes away. How does someone live with cancer with such a strong will when their body is barely alive? It's the soul. So I think to be aware of, and I think this is what you're asking, the medical intervention and the impact is very, very important. And I guess two things I'll say is, A, you never want to have too much morphine because you're not going to be present. But how do you want to live? You could live longer and with more, and possibly, definitely with more quality, with rejecting medical care that might give you a 3% chance of what? Of living longer, feeling worse? Like, I don't even know if that's what you were asking, but we have a choice energetically how we want our experience to end and what control we have over it. We don't hand that over to someone, which is why you don't do a living will, because they'll interpret it. So, yeah, there are people that have defied all odds. They have changed everything. You know, there's an amazing Zen hospice out in California. Oh God, I forget his name. He's amazing. He got electrocuted and lost his limbs. Oh God. Anyway, people come into his hospice and all of a sudden they're being given, they're off medicine, their fresh chocolate chip cookies are being baked, they're doing arts and everything, and they don't die.
Well, that's wonderful, because I do believe that love and attention has a significant impact on the trajectory of health or poor health.
Focus. Yeah.
And both, you know, love and attention towards yourself and toward the loved one who is undergoing health challenges, serious health challenges. So yeah, awesome.
There's a famous movie, I'll have to get back to you with this, where they decided not to tell the grandmother she was terminally ill. Do you know that movie?
Right.
And
no, I don't know the movie.
And she's still, I don't know, she lived another 20 years. The spoken word.
Right.
You have 6 months to live. You're going to die. Da, 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 da. That is powerful. That is presence. That thought has an energy to it.
Right. It's our
whole medical system.
It has an impact. It has an impact.
Huge impact.
Right.
The spoken word.
In the physiology.
The cell talk, the cells hear it, the body hears it, the person in the coma hears it. If you're standing next to someone who doesn't like you, you're not going to feel so good, whether you're thinking or not. Like, we are energy, everything's energy. We need to respect that. That really is the bottom line with all of this.
Awesome. Any final words, Barbara, as we conclude?
Thank you for opening me up to just really interesting thought processes, for doing what you do, for being on your incredible path. And thank you for taking the time to speak to me.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you for taking the time. I so truly appreciate it. I will include all the info in the show notes. I assume there's contact information on your website, Life Balance?
There is, and people can contact us. We do Zoom, we do end-of-life doula work. And what is your actual website? Just announce. It's liphebalance.com.
Okay.
Life balance. Life is spelled with the PH, which started with the nutrition.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we had yeah, this was wonderful.
This is really wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Awesome. So we'll be in touch.
Okay. Thanks so much, Noreen.